so first we're gonna have to disassemble the bumper. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the black trim that is on top. There are just a few screws that you can pry out with the flathead. Be very careful because on older cars like this, an '07 Accord, these tend to break. So be very careful. So just remove the few screws and remove that black piece. Now I'm lifting up the car so I can have easier access to underneath the bumper. Underneath the bumper there are a few screws very similar to the top, and you're gonna have to pry those out and unscrew them. Basically it just takes out a bumper attached to the bottom of the car. Now, once you remove all that, there is one Phillips screw on in the wheel well, as you can see that I just undid, and then you need to pull out the bumper, and that's basically it. It's just kind of stuck on like that. Just pull it on from both sides, and it comes out. To remove the headlight, there are 5 10mm bolts that secure it. One on the top, which you see me unscrewing now, and then there's one on the far side, closer towards the wheel well, and then 3 in the center. I'll go ahead and go over it in detail on the next headlight. So once you remove it, remove all of the lights. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys where those screws are. So the first one is going to be the far side right there. It's a 10mm bolt between the metal and the plastic. It's very obvious. It's a white bolt. And then on top there's another one, 10mm bolts right there. And then there are 3 in the center on that corner right there, which I had already previously removed. Once you remove those 5 bolts, go ahead and take the headlight out. So the headlight has this metal tray on the bottom of it. We're gonna have to remove that. It's another 10mm bolt on the bottom of it. You cannot remove this while it's in the car, so you need to remove the headlight first, get it out of the car, and then remove it. So there's that 10mm bolt on the bottom, and this tray just comes right out. It's not a good idea to keep this on and bake the headlight while it's on there. Now, I found some metal tabs on the headlight which I removed as well, just in case if the metal got too hot and melted the plastic. So there should be 3 of them, 2 on top, 2 on the bottom. They just pry right off, and you can slide them back on later. Now, I had already preheat the oven at 220 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm a big proponent of using low temperatures and longer time, so I baked this for about half an hour. Now, half an hour has gone by, and it comes out like butter. It really was really easy. Go ahead and bend all those tabs up. Don't worry about bending it out too far. You'll easily be able to bend it back. Okay, so now go ahead and just pry the headlight open, and there it was. I didn't have to use a screwdriver or anything to pry it off. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and take apart my mini H1 projector and clean it. This is something that I like to do. You don't have to do this. So first I cut off the connector. Now I'm going to head and undo the 4 screws on the front surface. Go ahead and undoing all that. There's your projector and your lens holder. Next is your solenoid and cutoff shield. And last is the projector base. So I'm just going to go ahead and take a rag, use some invisible glass or whatever you guys want to use, and clean everything. I'm sure the guys at TRS cleaned everything as well, but I mean, it's been a while. It's been sitting in a box, and I just don't want any dust to collect. So I'm just going to do some cleaning. I tested the solenoid about 50 times before I threw it in the car, and it worked fine. Now I'm gonna go ahead and just reassemble the projector, and then after you reassemble the projector, I put the shroud on right away. Now there are 4 screws that hold the shroud, so put those on as well. So there's a slight gap between the shroud and the projector base, so I'm using some aluminum tape to cover that up. I decided to keep my headlights chrome because I think blacking it out would look weird on the Accord. So keeping it chrome causes some issues because now the light will reflect and shoot out, so that's why you definitely need to tape off the gaps. Also, the aluminum tape is basically concealed with the chrome and the projector. You can't tell once the projector's inside that there is chrome tape or aluminum tape on the projector at all. Remove the headlight assembly apart. There's two pieces. There's that shiny reflective chrome piece and the black housing on the back. The 10mm bolt that you saw me unscrew, go ahead and just unscrew that as much as possible. There's also two ball and joint sockets on the bottom of the headlight piece, and go ahead and remove that carefully. I'm just unscrewing the bulb holder or reflector that the Honda has. Now there are three extra screws that you would need to remove from the 9006 socket. I'm pointing out just a few notches that we need to cut using a Dremel. Because we have a 9006, there isn't a adapter plate that goes with the Mini H1, so that's not a problem. You go ahead and cut those three notches because the lock ring does not fit, as you can see. So just go ahead and use a Dremel. It doesn't really need to be perfect, as long as you get those notches out of the way and that the lock ring can freely rotate around that area, you'll be fine. So again, this cut does not need to be pretty. Just need to free up some room for that lock ring to spin. I have fed the projector and the bi-xenon wires through the headlight. Now I'm checking if the lock ring fits on the headlight assembly. If it doesn't, you're going to need to Dremel some more. If it does, awesome. You're in great shape. As you can see, I'm spinning the lock ring into place. You want to try and keep the projector as centered as possible. How can you tell if it's centered? Well, if you look at the projector right there, there's a little nub on that circle. That nub at the bottom, you want to keep that towards the center of the bulb, or towards the center of the headlight as much as possible. It doesn't need to be perfect, but closer to the center, it makes your life a lot easier later on. So I'm tightening the lock nut ring with my hand, and then some pliers. You want to make this as tight as possible, but you want to give it some wiggle room, because we will be checking for the rotation right after this. Now we are going to go ahead and put the chrome headlight piece into the black plastic piece. First, that 10mm bolt that we first unscrewed, aim to put that in first, and then the ball and socket joints should easily follow afterwards, and then feed the bi-xenon wire through the gasket. Next, put the metal pieces back onto the headlight. These are the exact same ones we took off right before the bake. Now I have my HID bulbs wired up and placed into the projector. Place the headlight back into the car and bolt it down with a few screws. I'm going to use 3 screws to hold the headlight back in. One closer to the wheel well, one on the top, and one in the middle. Back your car out about 25 feet from a wall. Turn on your headlights. As you can tell, my passenger headlight is already set, but my driver headlight is off. Turn the projector by the shroud to level the beam. Once the beam is leveled, remove the headlight from the car and take it inside. We will be tightening the lock nut ring as much as possible using a pair of pliers. Once the lock nut ring is tight, take it to the car again and double check the rotation. This part is crucial because next step we will be adding epoxy to the lock nut ring and the headlight. We want to add epoxy between the lock nut and the headlight. I'm just pointing out where we want to add the epoxy. Here I will be adding epoxy on the lock nut and the crevices. This again just keeps the rotation squared away and no possible chances of it changing from the vibration of the motors or any bumps in the road. After placing epoxy on the lock nut, take the headlight out to the car and test the rotation one last time. After you've put the epoxy onto the lock nut, you have about 5 minutes, give or take, to rotate the projector for the last time. Here my roommate is adding new butyl glue to the headlight. I purchased the glue from the retrofitsource.com. It was a very cheap purchase, and I feel like it is an essential part of the project that helps seal the headlight better. The black glue versus the gray glue from the factory looks a lot better, and it melts a lot easier. Again, I can't stress how important this is. Buy new glue. This will eliminate any moisture issues you might have down the road. We now just finished adding glue all around the assembly, and now we'll be putting the clear lens to the front. You might see some extra red and black wires. These are for the Audi LEDs, which is also sold on the retrofitsource.com. Once the headlight is put together, put your oven on at 225 degrees, tuck the wires into a hole so they don't burn, and place the headlight into the oven. With this new glue, I like to use a lot less time. I only put it in there for about 8 minutes. After about 8 to 10 minutes, we remove the headlight. I like to put nitrile gloves on top of my gloves that I'm working with because I don't like getting glue on my gloves. Push the lens together, make sure all the melted glue oozes out, make sure it makes a nice tight seal, and then bend all those tabs we had earlier back onto where it needs to be. Using a heat gun can help bend these plastic tabs into place. Here we are showing you how to adjust the height of your beam. Using these projectors, you can still use your OEM height adjustment, which was huge for me. You need to put a Phillips screwdriver into this hole at a pretty steep angle to twist the gear that turns the height adjustment. As you can see here, the beam changes in height. And now we go on a test drive. Overall, I'm extremely happy with this product. The light output is amazingly clear, smooth, and not blotchy at all. I previously had a cheap HID bulb in the reflector housing, and the light output is uncomparable. But what really wowed me was the high beam function. The response for the high beam was extremely fast and infinitely better than the halogen beam. In the end, I would recommend everyone to get this upgrade. It is a relatively cheap modification, and the results are just profound. If you want to learn more about retrofitting, check out hidplanet.com and read up on it, or check out www.retrofitsource.com. They have a lot of great products on there, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email answers@retrofitsource.com. I've emailed them numerous amounts of times throughout their project, and they've always been very helpful.